I've always said that people don't need to scream at you to be cruel. Sometimes the worst racism whispers while it smiles. My name is Liana Mendez. I'm a 42-year-old immigrant from the Dominican Republic, a single mother of one brilliant daughter, and for the last 7 years, I've made my living cleaning houses in Fairfield County, Connecticut. You want to know what that's like? It's swallowing your pride with her morning coffee. It's having a stranger hand your dirty underwear without looking you in the eye. It's being miss when they're being polite, and the help when they forget you're human. The Callaways were one of my longest-standing clients. Rich, white, polished to a gleaming, empty shy. Their estate sat behind a wrought iron gate like a secret only money was allowed to know. I'd cleaned their toilets, washed their linens, and dusted their portraits for years without once being invited to speak unless it involved a broken vase or a wine stain on the rock. Then one week, out of nowhere, Mrs. Callaway asked if I could assist during their annual charity fundraiser. Not as a cleaner, as one of the servers. In uniform. At first, I hesitated. Something about her tone told me she didn't see me. Not really. But extra money meant another week of math tutoring for my daughter, Lucia. So I said yes. If you've ever had someone smile at you while putting you in your place, like and subscribe. I still remember the look in her eyes when she handed me the serving tray. It wasn't gratitude. It was control. The night of the fundraiser was like stepping into a movie I didn't belong in. I wore the black and white uniform they gave me starched and tied across the shoulders, and I stood shoulder to shoulder with catering staff half my age, all of us told to smile but not too much, to be warm but not too familiar. The house sparkled in candlelight. Guests sipped champagne and complimented each other on their shoes and their recent cruises. I smiled and nodded. I refilled drinks. I blended into the wallpaper. One woman, blonde, dripping diamonds, handed me her coat and called me Maria. That wasn't my name. She didn't ask. Another man, red in the face from too much bourbon, leaned in and whispered, "You from the Bronx or something? You got that spicy voice." I didn't answer. I just walked away. You learn not to feed those kinds of men. The worst part was that none of this was new. Not the assumptions. Not the backhanded compliments or the lazy racism tossed like confetti. It was the same party I'd been invited to my entire life, just with different chandeliers. I told myself to get through it, to focus on the money. But then something happened. The mayor, yes, the actual mayor, was standing near the stage, mic in hand, trying to get the attention of the event coordinator. He was frustrated, muttering something about sound check and dead mic. I just happened to be walking by with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. He turned to me and asked if I could help test the mic. I opened my mouth to say I wasn't with the AV team, but something in me said yes. Maybe it was the way he didn't even look at my face. Maybe it was exhaustion. Or maybe I just wanted to hear my own voice through something other than a vacuum hose. So I stepped up to the mic. I didn't plan to sing. I swear I didn't. But my fingers tightened around the stem of the tray, and before I could stop myself, I sang 3 quiet lines of a lullaby my mother used to sing to me when I was a little girl in Santo Domingo. The melody came out smooth, soft, like a breeze. Then everything stopped. Conversations trailed off. Forks paused midair. It was like I'd turned a key that no one knew existed. I froze. The silence was heavier than any applause. And then I heard laughter, just one guest, but loud enough to sting. Who knew the housekeeper had pipes? Someone joked. Mrs. Callaway looked mortified, not because I'd embarrassed myself, but because I'd drawn attention. I bowed my head, muttered, "Sorry," and stepped back into the shadows. I wanted to disappear, crawl inside the dishwasher, anything but stand in that light again. But as the night went on, people kept glancing at me differently. Like I'd broken some invisible rule. I was no longer just the help. I was something else. Something that made them uncomfortable. When the night finally ended, I stayed to help clean up. As I carried empty wine glasses back to the kitchen, a man approached me quietly. He was older, black, dressed in a modest gray suit with piano keys stitched on the cuffs. I'd seen him playing background jazz near the bar. "You've got a gift," he said. "Why'd you hide it?" I almost laughed. What else could I do with a gift like that? Where would it fit between toilets and toddlers and tutoring bills? But he wasn't smiling. My niece runs an open mic in the city. You should come. Seriously. He pressed a card into my palm. I stared at it for a long time, even after he walked away. That night, when I got home, I didn't wash the uniform. I didn't scrub anything. I sat on the edge of my bed while Lucia slept, holding that little white card like it was made of gold leaf. For the first time in years, I let myself wonder, what if my voice could do more than echo off marble floors and disappear into silence? I kept that card in my wallet for 2 full weeks. Every time I bought groceries or swiped my Metro card, I'd feel the corner of it poking at me like it was trying to remind me it still existed, that I still existed. I'd take it out at night when Lucia was asleep, just to reread the name, Walter James, jazz pianist. No address, just a number and a handwritten note underneath. Tuesdays, 7:30 p.m., The Velvet Vine. I Googled it once. Tiny lounge in Harlem. Low ceilings. Live music. Red curtains. Not the kind of place for a woman like me, used to scrubbing bathtubs, not singing under spotlights. But something about that moment at the fundraiser had cracked something open in me. I couldn't stop thinking about the way the room had gone still. About how my voice, just a lullaby, had interrupted their entire world for a second. And I wondered, if I could do that for a second, what could I do for 5 minutes? So on the 3rd Tuesday after the fundraiser, I made a decision that felt both ridiculous and sacred. I put on the only dress I owned that wasn't a work uniform, Lucia's old graduation dress, a little tight around the waist but still clean and soft. And I got on the bus to Harlem. My hands were shaking. I was terrified someone would ask me what I was doing there. But when I walked through the doors of the Velvet Vine, no one looked at me like I didn't belong. The room was dim, cozy, the kind of place where the walls seemed to hum with memory. On stage was a young girl reading poetry, and people actually listened. No wine clinks or fake laughter. Just listening. When she finished, Walter spotted me from behind a small piano near the corner. He gave me a smile, not the kind you give to someone you want something from, but the kind you give when you're glad they showed up. "You ready?" he asked, casual, like I hadn't spent the entire week rehearsing alone in my kitchen. I could barely speak. I nodded. And then I sang. I didn't have sheet music. I didn't have a plan. I closed my eyes and sang the same lullaby. This time, fuller. Richer. My mother used to say when you sing from your ribs, people can hear your truth. I sang from every rib. Every shift I'd worked. Every microaggression I'd swallowed. Every piece of myself I'd left behind in houses that weren't mine. And when I opened my eyes, people weren't just clapping, they were crying. Someone filmed it. I didn't know until Lucia showed me the next night. It had been shared on TikTok by a college student in the crowd. Caption said, "When the housekeeper walks in and sings like a goddess." The comments were full of strangers asking who I was, saying they felt something in their bones, saying I reminded them of their abuelas, of their mothers, of the music they'd forgotten they needed. I cried on the couch for 10 minutes straight, not because I was sad, but because for the first time in so long, I wasn't invisible. I was seen. Walter kept inviting me back. Each time, I tried a new song, some in Spanish, some English, sometimes both. He introduced me to other musicians, and I started writing my own lyrics again, just like I used to before my husband died. Music had always been my first love, but life had a way of shoving that love down to make space for survival. Until now, I began performing regularly. Local spots, small lodges, a Sunday jazz brunch in Brooklyn where people lined up just to hear me cover old boleros. Lucia would come sometimes, and she started recording me with better sound, editing my videos, setting up a YouTube channel. She believed in me so hard, it made me believe too. And then something wild happened. A booking agent saw one of my clips and reached out. She was organizing the entertainment for the governor's annual charity ball. Not a stuffy home party like the Callaways. This was a black tie, televised, real event. She wanted me to sing a set. Not just one song, 3. I couldn't breathe. I didn't have anything fancy to wear, no manager, no headshots. But the agent didn't care. She said, We want the woman in the red dress who made the whole room hold its breath. The funniest part? The charity ball was being sponsored by the same corporate board the Callaways were part of, which meant they'd be there. I didn't say anything. I didn't warn them. I let it happen the way it was meant to, honest, quiet, undeniable. I showed up that night with my curls free and my nerves barely contained. Lucia helped me zip up a floor-length red silk dress she'd found for $80 on consignment. I wore the necklace my husband had given me the night before he died. I told myself this wasn't revenge. This was return. Backstage, as the band warmed up, I peeked through the curtain and spotted Mrs. Calloway in the second row. Her lips were pursed, her pearls perfect. She didn't recognize my name in the program, but when I stepped into the light, mic in hand, her face changed. First confusion, then disbelief, then fear. I took a breath, nodded to Walter, and stepped up to the mic. The same one I'd been asked to test just a month ago. And I sang like every woman who'd ever been talked over, dismissed, used, and then forgotten. I sang with the soul of someone who finally remembered she mattered. That room didn't know what hit them. The moment I stepped off that stage, the applause didn't stop. It rolled like a wave, full and loud and honest. People stood. Strangers wiped their eyes. Walter gave me a proud nod from the piano bench. But my eyes went straight to Mrs. Calloway, frozen in her seat, face pale beneath her perfect makeup. She didn't clap. She didn't blink. She just stared, like she couldn't believe the woman in red was the same one who used to clean under her sink. That's when the event host took the mic and asked me to come forward again, this time not to sing, but to speak. So I did. I took a breath and told the crowd that I had once been invited to a fundraiser just like this. Not as a guest, not even as myself, but as a quiet body in the background, meant to smile and stay invisible. But sometimes, I said, when people try to make you small, they forget what happens when you find your own voice. The room hushed. Cameras flashed. A reporter asked for an interview right there on the carpet. And in that moment, I didn't feel like a housekeeper or even a singer. I felt like myself. Whole. Seen. I never went back to cleaning houses after that. Offers came in, gigs booked up, and Lucia and I moved into our own small apartment in the city. Not big, not fancy, but ours. And sometimes I still think about that mic check. How something so small can be the start of everything. Funny, isn't it? How the people who thought they were keeping you in your place accidentally opened the door you've been waiting to walk through your whole life.